Alright, I think we're slowly but surely getting somewhere here. No snap trap today. Obviously, you can see a little bit of my trap. So, something, I think the cows still, obviously the cows messed with it because they moved my pipe. But I added this this rock on the backside to try to encourage the cows to go somewhere else and not make it appealing to walk or do anything right over the trap. So, I think my next step is to remove this pipe because that's drawing a lot of extra attention. But I did this on several of my sets, adding something behind the trap, kind of making it a walkthrough to try to keep the dadgum cows from walking through there, where it's just small enough for a coyote or something like that to slip through. So we're making progress on keeping the cows out. I shine a light on this one otter set from the road and it looked different. And there you have it, we got us an otter. Alright, we're finally getting on the board. You see, that's one thing I like about those Belials is they're going to catch and hold. That otter, I don't know if he was going through so fast or why exactly he's not caught, you know, perfect by the head, but he's still dead regardless. So that's pretty exciting, getting on the board with an otter, and it's really exciting knowing that I got 3 more otter sets in down there by the on the pond dam. So we'll get him out and see. I don't know how this light works for you, but we'll get him out and see what else we've got down the road. That's a good morning though. One of the first. Well, I've checked 4 coyote traps. This is 2 more, so this is 6 coyote traps. My first set of water traps so far, and we're on the board with an otter. So that's good. It's a good morning. Alright, so there's one of my otter sets sitting clean. Got a dog proof. Whoop. Picked up another coon. We're starting this morning off right now. 2 animals, about 1/3 of the way through the traps. That's another dog proof. I got my other 2 otter traps down here, man. I'm pretty excited. It was a tough way to set them up. I really like setting drowners. I see one. I think both of them are still set. You see here, this is a big old pile of scat, otter toilet. There's some fresh otter sign right there, some fresh otter scat. Obviously, since I just caught one 50 yards up the pond. Well, shucks. I got both my traps here are still in good working order. I was really excited about this set, or these sets. I like number 5 footholds for otters. If I've got a good spot, got a good slide, pond crossing, something like that, man, I really like a number 5 bridger on a drowner for an otter. Like I said, these tree sets that I got are just something the only real good way I was thinking to try to actually get some otter traps out here. The edge of the pond is so trampled so much that I don't see any good spot to put a foothold. So anyway, like I say, we're on the board. That's 2 animals in the truck and a lot of traps to check yet. So we'll see what else we get. Dude, are you kidding? I just filmed you a nice little description on my traps here and then realized I didn't hit record, but I reset this trap. It's a Duke dog proof for all my haters out there that get upset when I say Duke traps are cheap. They are cheap. They're cheap cost-wise, price-wise for me to buy. You know, and to some extent because they are cheaper cost-wise, you know, they're cheaper quality. But that being the case, sometimes it helps to have, or sometimes it's useful to have a cheap trap. I'm testing out these Dukes compared to some of the other dog-proof traps just to see. But so far, this Duke is whacking some coons. Now, it doesn't have the traditional Duke trigger. I replaced it with a push-pull circle trigger, and I think the push-pull is definitely helping things. It's baited with marshmallows and caramel again. I've got another trap right over there. That's a Freedom brand dog proof, which is super easy to set. You just click it. When you pull the spring back, it sets. I don't even know if you can see that, but it is strictly a flat, straight dog, and it has to be pulled. Now, there were no marshmallows or caramel in that one, which, it's been getting up into the 60s, so the marshmallows, sometimes my marshmallows kind of disappear anyway when it starts getting warm, so I don't know if they just kind of disappeared on their own, or if that coon come by. What I suspect, he come by, picked out what he could from there, and then moved on to over here. And as soon as he pushed his foot in that trap, it got him. He didn't have a chance to finagle him out. My only concern, so I'm saying all that to say that I'm feeling really good about the push-pull triggers on the dog-proof traps. My only concern is that negates a little bit of the dog-proofness of them, right? Because, being able to reach in and only pull is getting very selective on your catch. So, in most instances, most dogs ain't going to be able to stick their foot in that in the trap anyway. But if you were doing some nuisance work or something like that, or even trapping like this in an area around where there's some cats, that would still give me some hesitation. I don't know that I'd still want to use or at least, house cats. I don't know that I would want to use a push-pull trigger. I think I'd go with a traditional pull-only dog proof, just to keep that trap as selective as possible. See what else we got. Off to a good morning. In my effort to try to discourage my cow interference, I set a couple of traps. I set actually 4. I set 2 new locations near the fence corners and the edges of the field. My other 2 sets are kind of on main cow paths, crossing dams and near creeks, and getting a lot of heavy cow traffic. And these areas are a little bit more distance from, where the cow, obviously there's plenty of cow crap and stuff up here, so I'm still gonna have plenty of issue. But you can also see, I'll just give you a quick shot of this this set, which is still dark, but I've got a pipe up here, so that's where my bait is, and then I've got this little piece of wood right here. So it's kind of making a makeshift walkthrough, hopefully to discourage the cows from wanting to step right in it. And so far I've had these traps set 2 days, and knock on wood, haven't seen any of the same issues that I have in the more heavily cow traveled areas. So maybe on to something here. Well, another old coon. Got pretty excited. This is another one of my sets that I set kind of on the edge of the field, trying to reduce cow interference, and we made a catch. Putting critters in the truck this morning, that's a good thing. That's an otter and 2 coons, and heck, I still got probably close to half my traps to check on another farm, so it's doing pretty good this morning. Just dispatched my coon, walked over here to check out my other trap, and I sure am glad I caught that darn coon, because he hit me here first. Probably came from the woods and flipped my trap out. And now something, if I hadn't caught that coon, he'd probably done the same thing on the other one. And then, a lot of times if you get something like that where your trap's flipped out of the bed, I wouldn't immediately think that's a coyote that's digging me out. It could be, but I found particularly when that trap is perfectly flipped out like that, flipped upside down, it's a coon messing with me. So I'm glad I caught him. Hopefully I won't have to deal with that. I'll have a big old song dog in the morning. Got to weed these coons out, and we're doing a good job of that. So I'm checking my TRAPLINE journal, and if you're not keeping some kind of record of your catches, what lure and bait you're using, I really recommend that you do. That way you know what's working for you, what's a reorder, and trying new things, figuring out what does work, and what catches what. Some things might be better bobcat catchers and coyote catchers or whatever. So and this is just a little TRAPLINE journal that I put together. You can get these on our website at coyotetrappingschool.com at the store. But it's pretty concise. It's got your date, property, set location, the set, and your bait and lure, and then any notes. I've used a bunch of little memo pads and stuff like that in the past, and I thought about this idea of keeping it a lot more cleaner, and I like it so far. If you get one, or if you've got one, I've had a few people that have ordered some and got any recommendations, let me know about if you think I'm missing something or need to add something or something like that. But anyway, on this set I had Hiawatha Valley, Bobcat urine, wool, and a little Gusto up high. So I'm going to go with that again. That's working for me. The other set over there, just the trap was dug out of the bed. I set it, bedded it solidly. I'm guessing that the trap moved just a little bit when that coon stepped on it. So I rebedded it. Not going to lure or bait it. It should be good to go. I'm going to keep it like it is. One of the, I guess you could say one of the ironic things is I've been setting all these sets with these kind of wet weather sets with this grass that'll hold up in the rain, and man, it's been the driest fall we've had in a while. So and there's a slight chance of rain later this week. I thought it was kind of supposed to rain today, but it's been fairly warm. It's in the 50s this morning. You've seen some other videos, you probably seen me sweating. Pretty cloudy this morning, but hopefully toward the end of this week it's going to cool off, and hopefully that'll really get the game moving. But we'll see what else we got. Like I say, we got to give me more traps to check. Man, I missed him here, boys. I missed him. I noticed I had a wing. Hanging from this post here, and that's what caught my eye. I would have just probably eased on by, but I noticed the wing was gone, so I wanted to check and see. And then I could see I had feathers, and you can see this this little tuft of grass that's raked out, and then boom, he called me out. Said I don't have what it takes. I got another set right up here. I'm hoping he was going north, because if he was going north, he's going to run across me again. And I'm going to show him who's the boss. All right, now it's game time. If you don't know what I'm talking about, I had a coyote come by. Sorry for being so vague, but I had a coyote come by, snatched my wing, and scratched out my set and got out of here. That's one of the issues with this set, you know, is I don't have a lot of backing. There's not a lot of direction here. I was just trying to use the outside edge of this little bit higher grass strip, and it didn't work as planned. But I've got an alternate idea in mind of how I can up my game here, and man, it's exciting. The game's moving. We already got some critters in the truck, and just got to this farm, so we'll see what we got. All right, that wraps up another day. No coyotes. Had a close encounter on the one set. Daggum, I missed him. I just plain out missed him. Nothing else. Got a few more water sets to check. I'm checking my trail camera right now. We'll see. We'll see if I had any misses or anything like that. Trying to see how much battery we got. Need some more battery. One thing I will say is, you know, this is, for these traps, this is check day 4. And, I mean, it's tough to not want to re-lure, re-urine, re-something. But like I said before, it's, to me, half of the interest, or half the battle is letting some of these really strong lures that you use kind of wear off a little bit, so they don't spook that coyote as he comes by and, you know, gets overpowered with skunk. So I haven't touched anything on any of my traps other than resetting a couple that have caught coons. So and I mean, I had the activity on the one, so there's definitely still enough smell there for them coyotes to smell. And we'll see what we got tomorrow. They're moving, they're in the area, so time will tell. All right, finally upping our water game. Still gotta up the dry land game, the predator game. But I had this snare set for a beaver and a fantastic crossover. I caught him. We'll see what else we got. That's one thing, you know, it's kind of awkward or unusual about a. That's a nice big beaver there. and I don't know if you can see, he's caught around the back, right in front of the hind legs. So that's one thing that is kind of unusual about snaring beavers. Most people think of snares as a you know, a killer set or something that's going to dispatch the animal. But with beavers, you know, they have basically no neck. They're head and shoulders, and so it can be tough to get just a perfect neck catch where they don't back out and you get a good lock on them. So in most scenarios, you know, snaring beavers means catching them alive, and they'll be caught right in front of the back legs or right behind the front shoulders. So they got us on the board. Let's see what else we got. Sucker's kicking my butt on this foothold. I put the foothold, I think I'm gonna move it. I got a comment yesterday to move my trap right up closer to the bank. I think that's a good idea. I might punch it out a little bit there with my foot to make it a little bit deeper, but put it right at the edge of the bank, and because they're walking coming up that bank. I think what they're doing is sliding down the hill, hitting it as they go and just tripping it. But I may have caught one of the culprits. Odds are it's going to be a family group in the lodge here. So it'll be 2 adults, some juveniles, or some well, you can actually have 3 age classes of beavers in an area. You can have adults, sub-adults, last year's young, and then juveniles, so this year's young. And usually the adults will run last year's young out. But it's tough to get an estimate of how many beavers are in an area reliably, because that's what you run into. I got a 280 down there, still set. But so I would say that lodge is not super huge and it looks kind of old. So I'm guessing it's going to be 2 adults, and then we'll see what else we got. There could be an old bachelor beaver. Regardless, had a pretty good day. An otter, 2 coons, 1 in a dog proof and 1 in a foothold, coyote set, and then a beaver. 4 animals. Have some skinning to do tonight. Did miss a coyote in my field set there in the hayfield, but we still got time, and he's not wise. So I made me a couple of burnt blocks the other day to put out in that hayfield that I think is really going to catch some attention. So anyhow, hope y'all are enjoying it. This is check day for my initial coyote traps. This is check day 4, but I've set some traps not yesterday, but all weekend. So we're running anywhere from a 2 to 4 day check, and starting to pick up game, and should continue from here. So I got my beaver, getting ready to skin them. One thing, beaver caster is very attractive to beavers as well as other things. And so you can take the casters out and use them, either kind of grind them up or sell them is probably the best thing, or trade them is what I like to do, is get a bunch and trade them for lure to different trapping supply dealers, because they're used in a lot of different lures and baits that dealers make. But one thing you can do to kind of get a little out of it for yourself before you do that is just a little old empty bottle, which is actually not empty. It's got part of a beaver caster cut up in there. But you take a kind of a wide mouth bottle is most helpful. Put it right here at the vent and just kind of give it a squeeze.
Not otter.
That's a beaver, buddy.
An otter.
That's not an otter, crazy.
An otter and a beaver.
And you can see I had some juice come out, and if you do that, you know, it may not be super effective, you know, using this beaver's caster or this beaver sin at the same pond where I caught him. But if you do that at all your locations, you'll get a nice blend that'll be good for otters wherever you're trapping. Just take a little bit of that, make you a caster mound, dump a little bit of that out, and it'll be just right. So this is a 35-pound male beaver. If you feel kind of right here in between the legs, you can actually feel its baculum. Beavers have a small penis bone, and so that's how, other than that, unless you see the nipples, which get prominent on some of the females, other than that, it can be tough to tell the sex of a beaver just from looking at them. And I tell you, I know I'm very fortunate to have a good place to skin, and very fortunate in the South. You don't really need a heated area to skin. Is one big plus. You don't have to have a heated. I got me a shelter here, got me some lights hooked up. Best thing though is having my winch. So if you're ever making an investment in your skin shed, looking to, I paid, it was like 7 years ago I think when I bought that winch, and I paid $100 for it at Harbor Freight. And deer, hogs, alligators. I haven't found something that it wouldn't pick up yet, but it sure is helpful just for adjusting your height when you're skinning, and you don't realize how helpful it is until you got it, or until you don't have it. I spent plenty of days when I started with a string hung over a tree branch. That gets old, because the best way to do that is to adjust your body, which means either squatting or kneeling or sitting, and that gets old quick. But you can see a lot of knife work. I grab where I can and try to pull. And don't give too much. So one thing you'll notice, beavers are case skinned, so they're skinned from the tail. You split them from the tail all the way to the bottom jaw and peel them off, and they're stretched in a hoop or a round shape. I did not. I only split them about halfway, and I'm skinning them because I found that sometimes it's easier fleshing them on a fleshing beam if you keep them, partially cut. That gives you a little more flexibility on the fleshing beam, and then you can finish them. Once you get them fleshed, just finish the cut on out. One thing to keep in mind with otters is their fur is pretty sensitive. So you can actually, if you just touch their fur with your bare hands, a dry otter with your bare hands, you can singe that fur. And truthfully, I don't know if I could even look at one and tell that it was singed, but just the heat from your hand reacting with that fur can make that fur kind of almost deform a little bit, get a slight bend or something, to where it reduces the value of the fur. North American Fur Auctions has an awesome pelt handling manual that'll walk you through all that, how the singed fur looks and all that. So it's best off, if you're going to handle a dry otter, spritz it down with some water, rinse your hands, wet your hands, something. And I, as a general rule, I always wear rubber gloves anyways when I'm processing animals. This is a small otter. So I think that typically otter is one of your more valuable furs. Typically what I tell people in the South is otters and bobcats are probably your two most valuable furs. And year to year they can range from an otter being worth $100 to an otter being worth $30. And it's been a while since we've seen $100 otters. But one thing to know, and it's helpful when you are, if you catch small animals that you can't let go, if you catch a small coon, a kit coon or something like that, a young fox or bobcat or something like that in a foothold, and their foot's good and you can let them go, that's great, because most of the times those smaller animals don't have the value that the larger animals do. But in a case like this where you caught it with a killer trap, a conibear on a drowner or a snare, you got to make the most of it, make the best of it. Probably what I'm going to do is see if I can sell this in the taxidermy market. If you know any local taxidermists, or get involved, or at least get to know, most states have a taxidermy association that Chief's down there digging in the dirt, that's who you hear. But most states have a taxidermy association, and a lot of those guys, they'll have contests where they'll have contests on judging mounts, and they try to get real creative and stuff. And so if you can come up with either a small specimen or a an oddly colored animal, something like that, a lot of times those guys will buy it, and they may even pay more than market value for it. So that's what I'm going to do with this otter. He's kind of small, like I say, so I'm going to freeze him whole. Typically I don't freeze my fur animals whole, but in this case, the taxidermists prefer to skin them their way depending on how they're going to mount it. So I'm going to freeze him whole, and see, I may wind up skinning him anyways, and this will be this would be a nice one to even just have tanned. That's something I've done too. Is, you know, if I get a fur that, you know, small animal or something like that, I'll just have it tanned. And keep it like that. I like having some wall hangers around, and you know, people are always asking about it. It's a good conversation starter. So anyway, other than that, I got one more coon to go. But what I'll usually do, you can see, I mean, it's dark. It's not that late, but with daylight savings time changing out and all, once I skin my animals, I'll freeze them. And so I'll let them hang till I get ready to put them in the freezer while I'm skinning, and then I'll just put them in a Walmart bag and put them in the freezer. Some people get hung up about rolling them nose to tail, tail to nose. I usually do it fur out because the flesh side can get freezer burned. So I'll just kind of put them in fur out. I'll put them in a Walmart bag, throw them in the freezer. Knock on wood, I haven't had any issues with slippage or anything like that. And then, you know, usually after trapping season is when I'll get them out and I'll try to process them. Now that puts you kind of out of the auction cycle, and so that's one of the weird things, particularly being in the South and being in Georgia where our trapping season is so late. You know, the auction cycles are usually, there's an auction in either late December or early January, and the furs have to be in a month ahead of the auction. So, you know, our trapping season is just barely getting started. So, and what I've seen, kind of my perception, and I probably should go back and kind of look, because you can view all the auction results, and I'm talking about North American fur auctions is who I deal with and who I always look at. But typically that December or January auction, the first auction, is usually the best prices. The prices tend to go down from there, and I don't know what exactly causes that. I'm sure one thing is they've got less fur than later on in the year, and you know, once there's a better supply of fur, so there will be an auction in either December, January, usually February and March, or in May or June, something like that. And with our furs, you know, our season running from December to February, and then trying to process them after season usually, and then get them to the auction in time, you know, a month early. A lot of times my fur winds up on the May auction, and I just did a video recently about, you know, kind of the pros and cons of how you can sell your furs. But anyway, like I say, typically that's what I do. I don't get hung up. I'll throw them in the freezer, and then as I can get to them, I'll take them out, I'll flesh them and stretch them, and go from there. So, hope that's helpful. I'm going to get this last coon and head in and get ready for tomorrow.